Hello, everybody, hello. Welcome to another edition of Copy That's interview series where we interview professional copywriters working in different capacities in this field. I have with me today the wonderful, the magnificent, the opinionated, the bearded Nabeel Azeez.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on. I finally made it. It's an honor and a privilege, actually. There's only two places I send beginner copywriters. Is Copy That and Copy Squad.
I sincerely appreciate that. Copy That needs as much help as it can possibly get. Nabeel is from Sri Lanka and currently lives in Dubai. And he currently calls himself Dubai's most expensive copywriter. He works with businesses to reach out to other businesses to either sell services or to become a vendor to that business. His copy is dialed in to being persuasive to decision makers, highly sophisticated audiences, the people with money. And what is the grind that you recommend to new copywriters?
The only thing that you have is brute force and reps. And so most people give up before they actually hit the numbers where they get statistical significance.
It's a numbers game. And if you aren't willing to play the numbers game, you're going to run into some trouble. A business doesn't want to hire somebody who's just there to siphon money from them. They want somebody who can actually deliver good results for that business.
It's funny you mentioned the tagline. I came up with that tagline when I was a complete beginner. I had no business using that tagline. Even though when I came up with it, I believe it was true, and I still believe it's true to this day. And I haven't been proven otherwise. If I am, I'll probably raise my rates. And I stopped using it a long time ago, but it's stuck, so it keeps following me around. That's okay. It's good. It's good for the mystique and the glamour.
Yeah, it reminds me of Daniel Throssell. I think Ben Settle called him once one of Australia's best copywriters, and he just ran with it. And so even if it's not true, you just run with it. So
yeah, that reminds me of this one copywriter who used Rob. You know Rob, who recently passed away from leukemia, Robert Allen.
Yeah.
So he sent out, like, this copywriter sent Robert some of his copy to critique, and Robert destroys it. Okay, and in part of the complete evisceration, he says this copy is sick. Okay, sick as in it's awful because there's so much, it's garbage basically. So the copywriter, he goes and he puts the testimonial on his site. Okay, it's sick, just quote unquote, it's sick, like devoid of context, with like this huge like 5 stars, Robert Allen's photo, and then Robert would laugh about it. He's like, okay, this guy, I don't know what this guy is doing, but like, respect,
respect it. You got to respect it. You said something that I think everybody learning copywriting needs to hear, because it is so different from what the gurus say, which is that when you are becoming a copywriter, you need to become basically a Swiss Army copywriter. And I was wondering if you could expand on that. And in particular, you said something about niching the last time that we spoke that I absolutely respected and completely agree with. And so I was hoping that you would actually share your ideas on niching today.
I mean, I'm always in two minds about niching, and there's always this like tension, right, between the two. Okay, do I go more specific, which makes it easier for me to get business in the short term, because I can, target my messaging and my offer and my services to that particular niche, or do I, as a beginner copywriter, go broad so that I can get as many wins under my belt, as many at bats as possible, and figure out what kind of copy I like to write, and which kind of businesses that I like to write for, that way, as opposed to just, because it's like, picking your major in college. Like 95% of people have no idea what they want to do with the rest of their life, and so they end up picking like a BS major, and then graduate with like $100,000 in student loans and end up working at Starbucks as a barista. I never got around to coming up with a niche. And so where a lot of other copywriters might have taken a year or less than a year to get their big break, it took me around 3 years to finally get like a client who would hire me, take me seriously, and actually get a solid business going where I could make a comfortable full-time living as a copywriter. I got introduced to copywriting through a friend who was into self-improvement. He introduced me to Ramit Sethi of iwillteachyoutoberich.com. And Ramit himself is an accomplished copywriter. Obviously, since he's grown much larger, he's got his own team who does the copy for him. But in the beginning, he would write all of his own copy. And so I got introduced to copywriting through him. And through Ramit, I got introduced to this entire online business world. I got my first paying gig by accident because I was volunteering at a community center. The community center was hosting an event, and the event needed branding and marketing collaterals. And my friend, who was also a volunteer, owned his own agency, and they needed somebody to do the writing for them. And so he hired me, and I sort of fell into doing paid copywriting that way. But for the longest time, I was doing it part-time alongside my day job. And because of that, I never really put in a lot of hard work into the grind that I tell a lot of beginner copywriters to get into. And it was only after that company was acquired and then I got made redundant that I went into full-time copywriting. Even then, I didn't go into it completely because my friend who owned the agency that I told you about, he offered me a job to come and work with them to help them grow their agency. And I did that for about a year. That didn't really work out as planned. I technically came in as a partner in the business, a minority partner, but it didn't really work out. We didn't work that well together. We're still friends to this day, and they're one of my longest running clients. But it's just like, once you get a taste of copywriting, you become sort of unemployable. It's difficult to be in a job setting once you get a taste of working for yourself and that freedom. So then I eventually went out on my own. And then the year after I left the agency, that was probably the most difficult year because I was still a generalist copywriter with no niche, trying all kinds of things. About a year after that, I got my first like proper client where, my expenses were covered and I could, actually relax. And then I was working with only that client for a long time, and then it slowly snowballed from there. While I was sort of trying to find my footing, as it were, I was still writing the daily email. I've been writing my daily email since like late 2017, and so I was getting reps in that way. I kept on publishing content. That content was actually what got me my first real gig. The tactic is called the birthday DM. So on Facebook, you can see everybody's birthday, right? And you can see it on LinkedIn as well. So you wish them a happy birthday. And I wished my client a happy birthday. And then he said, hey, man, I've been actually thinking about getting a copywriter. Do you have some time to talk? So that happy birthday DM ended up in over 6 figures in client fees.
The birthday DM as a tactic might work in some instances, but really what's interesting and cool about that is that it implements a general strategy, which is find interesting and unique ways to get the attention of people that you're trying to reach out to.
I agree with that. And also it wouldn't have worked if I hadn't already developed a reputation for consistency and credibility and shown him my work, as it were, before actually DMing him. The copywriters will find this as well. The people who buy are usually lurking. They don't engage with your stuff. So this guy had never engaged with my stuff meaningfully before. He was just consuming the content. And then when it was time, he didn't even need any convincing. We just had a conversation. Okay, what's your budget? And the budget was like way over what I was expecting, because at that point I was like in one of my low points. I was like, I would have taken anything. And we started off at $3,000 a month, which is like more than enough for me to cover all of my expenses at that time. So yeah, it turned out very favorably.
Let's start with what you said about the grind that you typically recommend to new copywriters. Could you expand on that? What is the grind that you recommend to new copywriters?
I'll explain that by telling you a story about my brother, who I got into copywriting as well. So my brother, he's my business partner in Dropkick Copy. He helps me out from time to time. He got into copywriting without going through the grind. I was just handing him clients. So he doesn't appreciate the value, like how hard it is to get that client and the amount of shit that you have to eat. Number one, he needs to eat the shit. And number two, he needs to learn the value of a dollar. You know how the boomers say, that kind of thing. Because I've been handing him these clients so easily, he hasn't had to start from zero, and so he feels like sometimes he might feel like the actual hard work of sending 30 to 50 DMs a day is like almost sort of beneath him. I don't know if it's the fact that the copywriters feel like the work is beneath them, or that they're not trained to handle rejection, which is perfectly understandable. You know, you hear no 100 times. It's rough, right? That's what I mean by the grind. You don't even know anything and don't know enough to finesse anything. Like, you don't have any skills. You don't have any points of leverage in terms of content or audience that you can use, or even any authority. The only thing that you have is brute force and reps.
I'm not looking for the most technically proficient person. I'm looking for the person who is most trainable and most willing to put in the work. And the problem that I see among a lot of newbies is that they just are not willing to put in the work. The moment that they hit that first obstacle, they're like, maybe copywriting is not for me. You talked a little bit about that 30 to 50 DMs grind. I guess the question that I have for you, for everybody who wants to start doing that, is at what point do you need to switch up your strategy? Nothing that I've done has worked so far. What should I do instead? How do I change this?
If you've done cold email at scale, you know that they send 1,000 emails and they'll expect 5 replies of any kind, not even positive replies, right? Let's say those are all positive replies, and we're being very generous here, and you're able to close 20% of them. Again, we're being very generous. So that means you need to send 1,000 DMs to get 1 client. 1,000 DMs, 50 DMs a day. Let's say you only work on the weekdays, right? So 4 weeks, pretty much almost an entire month to get 1 client. And that's going to be difficult to do. 50 DMs a day for 4 weeks straight. Even if you take the weekends off and you're hearing no consistently, it's going to be super hard to do. Most people are going to give up. And so most people give up before they actually hit the numbers where they get statistical significance. Like, people will do their stupid A/B test of their subject line with the 100, 200 person list. The idea is that they haven't done enough volume for them to make an educated decision on whether it's working or not.
It's a numbers game. And if you aren't willing to play the numbers game, you're going to run into some trouble. So,
one thing that I haven't seen any copywriters do or any service providers do is, when they're beginners, play on the heartstrings. The best cold email I ever got was from this guy called Nate Schmidt. Okay, Nate Schmidt is a dropshipper now, but he started off as a copywriter. So he sent me an email. It wasn't even like the perfect cold email. It was long, unoptimized, everything, okay? But it was sincere. He said, "Hey man, this is what I've been doing. Would you be willing to coach me on a few things? I'm just trying to get my start in copywriting, blah, blah, blah." So it was a very sincere message, and then I said yes immediately. People want to help you if you look like you're putting in effort. It's very easy to send a message that is sincere in that way.
You want, when you're doing this, to seem credible. And you've sort of touched on that along the way, and even implied that, like, one of the reasons why you got your first big gig is that you had this sort of bulk of credibility behind you, so that when you got somebody's attention, they actually were able to see that and had been seeing it for a while. And so one of the things that I wanted to ask you was, what is your opinion on creating a personal brand for yourself as a copywriter or as a marketer?
Well, actually, this is a superb question, and I don't know a good answer for this, because when I started creating my personal brand, I didn't know shit about shit. Now that I have a little bit of experience, I would say that I'm slightly above average. And I see other people doing what I was doing, and I know they don't know what they're talking about. One, because a lot of them have been in Copy Skills before, and they're like former members of Copy Skills. So I've critiqued their copy, and I've seen their problems, and I've seen the questions they ask me. So I literally know they don't know what they're talking about. And so they're posting value posts the same way I was posting value posts. Okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, this is what I was doing too. So, like, maybe you gotta fake it till you make it. But at the same time, you shouldn't bullshit people, right?
That's a pretty good transition to something that you call the troll framework.
So the troll framework is a synthesis of stuff that I've been seeing happen online about the way that personal brands will tend to grow. The troll framework, there's 5 levels to it. There's the anonymous level, there's the lurker level, there's the public but not something level, there's the public but authority figure level, and then there's the pariah level. So it's like a pyramid, and it's an upside down pyramid, okay? So the point of the pyramid signifies less influence and reach, and the higher up you go, the base of the pyramid gets larger, and that signifies more influence and reach, but also more haters. And so when you get to the pariah level, that's like the level where you don't want to be. It's where your haters are institutional, like governments are trying to cancel you, like Julian Assange or Edward Snowden or Ross Ulbricht. So you want to be one level down, which is the fourth level, which is sort of like authority figure or thought leader, where you're a public figure and you have haters, but you have people who are diehard fans as well. And to get to that level, one, it takes being authentic and being honest in the way you portray yourself online. Basically, you have to be the same person you are online as you are offline. And two, you have to be willing to deal with people who don't agree with you. You have to be willing to be polarizing and say things that may not be acceptable in the current Overton window and the particular situation that you're in.
On that note, I want to ask you a question that I've gotten from a few viewers of the Copy That channel who are they're Muslim, and one of the questions that they ask is of the nature of like, what should I do if I get the opportunity to work for a business that disagrees with what I believe in, or that sells something that I don't agree with? There's an ethical friction there. Do you have any thoughts on that, or any advice that you give to anybody, like regardless of their background, what they should do in that sort of situation?
For Muslim copywriters, it's in most situations it's kind of cut and dry. So we can't write copy for haram stuff. So no OnlyFans funnels, no casino gambling offers, no alcohol, that kind of thing. The gray area, okay, is value stacks, okay, where it's like this is valued at $75,000, but it's yours for $999, okay, and then you're getting this, which is also valued at $5,000, and this was when those items in the value stack have never been sold before, and they're worth nothing. It's just a completely arbitrary price. So there, you have to exercise some judgment. Me personally, I never write value stacks that way. I've gotten into arguments with clients about it before. I simply refuse to write it. I'll deliver the copy the way it's acceptable to me, and then if they want to do their value stack whatever afterwards, it's their copy. They can do what they like with it. But I refuse to write those kinds of copy. I also refuse to write fake stories. So like you will never find me writing like a Chris Haddad type VSL, because that's completely made up, even if the sentiment behind it is true. It's most of it's a judgment call. The stuff that the value stack stuff is actually more clear cut because it's literally not allowed. But in many cases you have to exercise some judgment. And there is a tradition in Islam where the Prophet Muhammad said there are 7 people who are granted shade on the day of judgment, on the day where there is no shade. So they'll be granted shade under the throne of God. And one of them is a salesperson who never lies, because it is so hard to be 100% honest when you're selling things. Okay, you will make offers that aren't exactly true. You'll make claims that aren't exactly true. You'll give your word and won't fulfill your word on particular thing. It happens so many times, and it's very, very difficult to be 100% honest as a salesman. That applies to you as a copywriter selling your services, and it also applies to the client work that you do that sells your clients products and services.
I think that's an extremely powerful message, and it really resonates with everything that we're trying to do at Copy That and trying to teach people at Copy That, because we are so invested in integrity, honesty, and being a respectable person, and using that to basically implement your skills and get out there in the world. I do have a few things that I have done to get around my ethical qualms with the value stack. One of the simplest ways to justify those prices that you cross out is to just throw the bonus onto your website and sell it for that price. And so that's a very simple way to now all of a sudden you are telling the truth. Yes, you get this thing for free. If you went to the website, you would see how much it normally costs. You specialize in teaching people from the global south, South America, Africa, the Middle East, South Asia, not Australia. Forget Australia, but the other countries. And I wanted to ask your opinion of like what folks from those countries can do to better position themselves to work either in their own countries or for Western businesses.
I think the biggest difficulty they have has less to do with copywriting and more to do with writing. The way I do that, or the way I recommend to copywriters and copy skills, is to read Better Business Writing by Brian A. Garner. It's part of the Harvard Review books. On Writing Well by William Zinsser. Paris Lampropolis makes his cubs read it 3 times. And Elements of Style by Strunk and White. So those 3 books. And once you've read those 3 books, you are, maybe 50% of the way there. Okay. The other thing that you can do is hand copying, which a lot of people tend to poo-poo on because it's hard work, and people don't like doing hard things. But hand copying will kinesthetically ingrain in your memory what conversational native English copywriting sounds like. My personal favorite for this, and I think most of my writing style is based on him, is Gary Halbert, and he's sort of mastered this way of writing conversationally. It's so simple. It's like butter when you read it, and I think it's because like I emulate his style so much that I never get any complaints about tone and voice from my clients, because Gary's writing it's like having no accent almost when you if you understand my meaning.
Yeah.
And so like anybody could it could sound like it came out of anybody's mouth. So I like Gary Halbert for that. What I've noticed is with some of the copy skills members, with our scholarship members, they do the Bensavenga 100 challenge, and so they've written Gary Bensavenga's retirement sales letter 10 times. And I can see a huge difference between their copy and someone who's only learned copywriting from courses or watching videos and listening to podcasts. Huge difference. And they're all all of them are beginners as well.
I try to let people choose their own adventure when it comes to that. I had to handwrite some of the most successful sales letters of all time when I first started as a copywriter at Agora. And what I found was that it was extremely helpful, but the most helpful thing for me was a combination of like handwriting, retyping, and then actually taking notes on like what each sentence and what each paragraph was doing. Because if you handwrite, at least I found this for myself, if I'm handwriting something, at a certain point, I'm not absorbing what I'm writing anymore. But I found that forcing myself to slow down even more. Handwriting, for everybody who knows it, it's painstaking and it's so slow. But by forcing yourself to slow down even more, to think about every single word as it's being deployed in a deliberate sequence, it really ingrains everything that has been put on the page. I'm actually working with one of my businesses right now, and we are working on a B2B cold email strategy. And so I wanted to personally ask you, just like, from one writer, one marketer to another, what approaches would you take to actually doing that? And yes, this is my sneaky secret way to get a free consultation from the Nabeel Azeez.
I'm not an expert in cold email. I have written cold email scripts for clients in the past, and we've gotten a significant lift. But I was just applying what I know of direct response. And so with the one SaaS client, B2C SaaS client or B2B SaaS client, he had a Instagram scraper. It would scrape email addresses from Instagram accounts. We were able to get an 800% lift in replies by just applying what I know about email copywriting and what I know about direct response and coming up with a good offer. You want your email getting seen. For it to be seen, it has to get into the inbox. And so everything that you do needs to be optimized around around that. The first thing that happens is your ad needs to get noticed. Okay. If your ad doesn't get noticed, your message doesn't get delivered, and you don't get to persuade. So first thing that happens is your message needs to get noticed. Your ad needs to get noticed. Then you get to communicate. Okay. And then if they read through your message, read through your communication, then you get the opportunity to persuade. Your cold outreach efforts have to be optimized around that.
I mean, a lot of what you're describing is sort of basic concepts from direct response copy: impressions, click-throughs, conversions. You know, the more you can funnel into each one of those different numbers, the more sales you're actually going to be able to get. Is there any other advice that you have for people that are not only doing this for businesses, but also doing it for themselves, just in terms of reaching out to businesses to sell their copywriting services?
If you're sending hyper-targeted cold outreach emails, okay, you can only send like max 20 to 30 a day, like 10, if they're, really good. And so you'll never reach that threshold of needing to do, technical deliverability stuff. Like your own, like Gmail can send those 30 without any kind of software or things like that. Once you start to get to the higher numbers, it's more important to have lead quality. Okay, so you want to get like triple verified leads. It's like, again, that's also direct response, right? It's the quality of the audience or the quality of the list, and then it's the quality of the offer, and then after that, it's the quality of the copy.
I've seen you talk about email copy. I've seen you talk about actually writing an entire sales letter on spec for people. What advice would you give to people who are trying to learn these concepts and want to start doing a little bit more of what you're doing, which is writing emails for businesses, writing sales letters for businesses?
You have to actually like writing or be comfortable with writing in order to be a good copywriter, because you're going to be writing like millions of words a year. You need to find ways to make it interesting. And so I'm always trying to amuse myself with the copy that I write. It's easy to go stale because you're writing so much. And so you need to be consuming a lot of information and a lot of entertainment. I didn't used to watch TV so much, but now I watch a lot of Netflix, Prime, Apple TV. And it's not even that I'm looking for things, but it's just to like soak up, like indirectly, almost through osmosis, potential ideas and things like that subconsciously. If this is something that you got into because you thought it will be easy to make money with, it's going to be very difficult, because it's not easy to make money with it. It takes time to get traction. There's very few people that are the success stories that you see in these coaching programs, where like they show up randomly out of nowhere, and then in like 4 or 5 months they see some success. In order to get where you want to go, like you have to actually enjoy doing it and actually like doing it.
A business doesn't want to hire somebody who's just there to siphon money from them. They want somebody who can actually deliver good results for that business. You talk a lot about like hitting singles. And I think that a person can actually have a really solid, amazing career in life if they only hit singles with the copy that they put out into the world. And I wanted to ask you not only what you meant by that, but also like what you see as like the big difference there.
Yeah, I was telling you, it's like there's working actors and there's I don't know what you call them, blockbuster or headline actors, that kind of thing, superstars,
like
that kind of thing,
Brad
right?
Pitt versus Steven Tobolowsky,
Yeah, exactly. So the working actor, he makes a great living. He gets consistent work. He might be even making like $1 million a year, $2 million a year, that kind of thing. But he doesn't get paid 50 million, 100 million a picture. He doesn't get points on the retail distribution and the action figures and things like that, right? And so that's sort of like the difference that I view when I look at my list of results that I've been able to get for my clients. Okay. And the kind of results that you guys get. Obviously, you write in financial copy, the numbers are order of magnitude different. Okay, but there are other copywriters that do like things like $1 million launches and things like that. And to my knowledge, at least, I haven't done $1 million launch. I have worked with businesses over the long term to maybe generate $10 million. Okay, but that was me acting as a part of a team, right? I never take credit for that kind of, I'm not on social media saying $10 million in revenue generated, okay? That's why I look at myself as somebody who's hitting singles and sort of like a blue collar kind of copywriter, the working man's copywriter. So like I have these great wins across many different industries, across many different types of copy. Amazing wins, right? But they're not like blockbuster level wins. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I have a wonderful income off of that reputation and that credibility and that career. I enjoy the work that I do. I don't have to write copy that I don't like to write. It's you could call it successful. It's fulfilling, but it's not flashy, right?
Yeah.
But what sells, especially when you're producing content for copy online, is the flashy stuff.
I was thinking, like, what are the ways to make that big, blockbuster kind of money? One of the best ways is to actually do what you're describing, to hit singles, but find ways to hit more singles at scale. And I found that there's a few different ways to do that. Like, for example, one of my businesses is a content licensing business. And recently, for the business that I'm partnered with in Japan, we had a bunch of their copywriters over, and Mark Ford and I consulted with all their copywriters and just said, like, listen, if you're trying to sell this kind of product, this is what you need to do. And one of their copywriters just took all the advice, like point by point, like literally, like just wrote the lead, answering all the questions that Mark Ford asked. And it was their biggest best-selling promotion that they've ever done. It was something like 5 billion yen. I don't want to get the number right because I don't remember it exactly, but it was like more than they'd ever sold before in one go. And it was just a matter of like taking ideas that work in one place and then finding another place where it would work. And in that case, Japan, like they had never seen an offer or sales letter that was quite like that. Using that kind of arbitrage is one way to hit those blockbusters.
One of the copywriters that I admire the most and whose career that I want to emulate is Bob Bly.
Oh yeah.
And like this guy is like the opposite of, I mean, he's an A-lister, but like
Yeah.
nobody, like he gets no respect. Like
It's true.
like he's literally like he's an alligator, in poker they say alligator blood, right? Where like he has staying power, right?
Mhm.
And he's been around forever. He's still writing client work. He's still doing client work today. And he's not like, oh, I specialize in VSL funnels and stuff like that. He writes every kind of copy for every kind of business. He writes like stuff like annual reports and
Yeah.
technical white papers. And that is the copywriter that I want my career to be like the most.
He is definitely an A-lister, but he's just not flashy. Before we depart and before we end this conversation, which I've really enjoyed, thank you so much for your time and for talking to my audience. Is there anything else that you would like to say to people out there that are either interested in getting into copywriting or doing the work and like, putting in the reps? What message do you have for them and what advice do you have for them that you haven't shared with them so far?
If you're brand new and you're just now trying to get into copywriting and you find yourself overwhelmed and you find yourself, needing accountability and motivation, or just in general, if you find yourself needing more motivation or accountability, you should quit. You should quit because the amount of work that it takes is too much for somebody to have to hold your hand through it. You can have a coach giving you feedback, but at the end of the day, like you have to show up and demonstrate that you're putting in the work. The members in Copy Skills that have the least success are the ones who engage the least. They join the program or they join the community and maybe they go through some of the courses, but they think it's like some kind of magic fix for their career. And then suddenly, just by taking this one action of paying $20 a month, they're going to start getting clients. But it doesn't work that way. There's so much work that's involved in trying to get clients, trying to improve your copy, managing the clients. If you're not resourceful enough to at least get the basics out of the way by yourself, then there's no chance for you. If you are good enough to make it, then me telling you to quit won't affect you at all.
On that note, if people want to hear more from you, where can they go to get more from you?
I think the easiest would be to follow me on Twitter. My email list is currently closed, not accepting subscribers. Unless you become a customer, you either become a client of my agency or buy one of my info products or join Copy Skills or buy one of my books. Then you can join the list. I might open it up later at some point, but for now, I'm not accepting any more subscribers. So the easiest way to get a hold of me is follow me on Twitter.
Nabeel, thank you again for taking the time to talk to me today. I really appreciated your insights. I really appreciated the advice that you have for people. And I hope that everybody watching, enjoyed this conversation, take something from it, and find success with it. So thank you very much for joining today.
Thank you, Sean. It was my pleasure.